So scatterplot. Scatterplots and trends are the section title, the subject for this last section. And the difference between a scatterplot and a line plot, and I wouldn't write down this first part, but on your quiz, we just had a line plot. And I gave you points. We had like 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, I wouldn't write this down. But for that, we had like one number for each of those. Each x value had like one number. And it didn't look like that, but it maybe could have if I'd given you different points. But a line plot is something like that. Fair enough? The difference between a line plot and a scatter plot is for something to be a scatter plot, it's possible to have more than one y value for a certain x value. So when you have like 2 for an x value, you could have several different heights, several different y values for that x value of 2. So a scatter plot, what we want to say is it's a set of points. It's really a graph with a set of points, but a set of points that shows a relationship. By that they mean when x is this number, what is y? But shows a relationship between two sets of data. So it's a set of points that shows a relationship between two sets of data. So for example, my little graph here that I do want to actually fill in, we have time studying. So the x-axis is how long did you spend studying for your quiz or for your exam or for a geography something or other. And here would be the percentages. Realistically, I probably should do a good job and put on like 0 up to 2 or something, 0 hours to 2 hours. And so you could put on numbers. It doesn't really matter for this example. You could put in like percents from like 0 to 100 or something like that. But do you agree? 2 people that study for, maybe it should be minutes instead of hours, but we put down hours. Do you agree that 2 people that study for 1 hour, one person could have this percent, whatever this y value would be? We don't have a scale on there, but somebody else could study for the same amount of time and do better. Or somebody else could study for that much time and do right in the middle or something. So a scatter plot is going to just be dots, but it's possible for the dots, more than one dot, to have the same x value. Now, when we do this, should, as we go to the right, so as you study more, should your percent be going up or going down? Up. In theory, the teachers want you to believe when you study more. So if I were you, I'd put some random dots on there and just kind of have your trend kind of be that the ones on the right are higher than the ones on the left. That's what us teachers try to convince you of, at least. But it shouldn't be a straight line, because there isn't some magical, if everybody studies for 20 minutes, they get a B minus. If everybody studies for 40 minutes, they get an A minus. If everybody studies for 42 minutes, they get an A. But that would be like the kind of the trend. So use this. I'm jumping up here to my second little bullet point under scatter plot. So you use a scatter plot instead of a line graph when one x can have more than one y value. So use a line graph or use a scatter plot instead of a line graph when one x value can have more than one y value. Now the line of best fit, they also call those trend lines. I'm going to put that in red for dramatic emphasis, so a trend line. So I think in the homework, you're going to have some questions that say, draw a trend line, or make a scatter plot and draw a trend line, or something like that. A trend line shows a pattern. So if we were to have something with a positive trend, it's going to have a bunch of dots, kind of like our example above that, are going up as they go to the right. So you could have, I'm just going to put some dots on there. And yours will probably look different than mine unless you take all kinds of time. But you just want dots kind of going up that aren't really in a perfectly straight line. A trend line should try to go like about right through the middle of the points. So I'll see how I do here. And it should be a straight line. So something like that here. That's pretty good. So I have about as many dots up above as I do below. If you have one dot that's way up high, that's going to kind of pull it up a little bit higher. So we go below. A negative trend then should start kind of up high a little bit, and the point should go kind of down. They don't have to be in a nice straight line. They can be kind of scattered out some. Then you try to draw a trend line through there. And one of the places where trend lines come in handy is say you have a certain x value and they're saying, estimate the y value for this x value. Well, say this is my x value right here. If I don't have that if I have the red line, I can just say, okay, for this x value, go up to the trend line, then go across, and okay, that's my y value. But without that trend line, it's like, do you go up to this point? Do you go up to that point? Trend lines help you figure out what would a good y value approximation be for an x. For no trend, a lot of people want to go horizontal. But if you have a horizontal line, it's just kind of a trend of no change. Instead, you just want points that are kind of smattered around all over the place. So if you were to take, and maybe we did a graph of like your shoe size and the number of pets you have at home. Do you agree those two shouldn't be connected at all? It's not like people with big shoes have more pets or less pets. So you should get this scatter plot something like this. Some people have big shoes and no pets. Some people have big shoes and lots of pets. Some people have small shoes and no pets. So with this one here, it doesn't make any more sense to draw a line this way than it does to draw a line this way. Either way, the data doesn't have a trend. So no trend is just going to kind of be like a shotgun with bird shot or whatever. It's just kind of, there's kind of hits all over the place. Good?
Go ahead.
All right. If you have a data table, I'm going to jump to the middle one. Do you agree we'd put x over here on the left and y there if you're listing a bunch of points? And if you have a horizontal data table like this one here, x goes on the top or bottom? Top. That they pretty much always list x first. Now, is x the dependent values or the independent values? Independent values. So whenever you do this, you could, if you wanted to, maybe that's going to make it more confusing, I'm not sure, but you could put like an I for independent and a D for dependent. But they always list the independent values, or like the x values, before they list the dependent values. On my graph over here on the left, where do the x values go? Go for it, Tyler.
The
Bottom one, yep. So the x values are always here. So the independent, D-E-P-E-N-D-E-N-T. So the independent variable goes on the x-axis, goes on the horizontal. And the y is going to be the dependent variable. So as you're going and you're doing a graph, if we were doing something like study time and grade on the test, and I don't know if I'd try to put mine on, but that example up above, I had the percent here on the y-axis, and the study time was down here on the x-axis, because the percent should depend on how much effort did you put forth. Did you do the homework to learn it? Did you study the night before? Some of that type of thing. Time typically always goes on the x-axis, because until you learn physics, special relativity says when you're going super high speeds, time changes in how fast it goes by, or gravity can impact time stuff. But until you get there, normal life stuff, time is independent. So time goes down here, percent goes here. I should make a comment. A lot of people do number 2 in the homework wrong. Number 2, they have a chart like this, and on the top they have age, and on the bottom they have sleep time. Does the amount of sleep you need depend on your age, or does your age depend on the amount of sleep you need? Well, it's not like if I need more sleep, I suddenly could get older or younger. So it's more that, like, my kids are young right now, so they need more sleep because of their age. So the amount of sleep you need depends on how old you are. So both of these are really kind of times, but the sleep time is the dependent, so sleep time has to go here on the y, and the age goes here on the x, because the amount of sleep you need depends on your age. You with me? And honestly, most of the time, you can just look at it, well, whatever's listed first is always on the x-axis. Whatever's listed second is on the y.